I'm 85 years old, and I built a career people still mention in town, but I neglected a life that no one talks about anymore. At my age, the nights are longer than they used to be. Not because I can't sleep, though that happens too. They're longer because there's more behind me than ahead of me. More memories than plans. More silence than conversation. I'm not telling you this because I want sympathy. I've had a full life, at least on paper. Awards. A corner office. My name printed in local newspapers more than once. I'm telling you this because I'm running out of time, and I don't want to carry this truth to the grave without saying it out loud. When I was 25, I believed work was love. Not the romantic kind. The steady kind. The kind that keeps the lights on and food on the table. I grew up watching my father struggle. He worked until his hands were stiff and his back was bent. We didn't talk much in that house. We survived. That was the goal. So when I got my first real job, I made a promise to myself. I would never let my family live with that kind of fear. I would outwork everyone. I would become indispensable. And I did. I met my wife, Helen, when I was 29. She had a laugh that filled a room without trying. She liked simple things, Sunday walks, burnt toast with too much butter, sitting on the porch at dusk. I liked her steadiness. She liked my ambition. At least at first. We married quickly. It felt practical and right. In those early years, I told myself I was building something for us. Every late night at the office, every weekend spent reviewing reports instead of visiting her parents, I framed it as sacrifice. Temporary sacrifice. There would be time later. That was the phrase I used. Later. When our first son was born, I held him in the hospital room and felt something shift inside me. He was small and red-faced and loud. Helen was exhausted, smiling through it. I told her I would work even harder now. She didn't say anything. She just looked at me in a way I didn't understand back then. I missed his first steps. I was at a conference 3 states away. Helen told me over the phone. She tried to sound excited, but there was a thinness in her voice. I congratulated her. I congratulated my son, as if he could hear me. I told myself there would be other steps. There were. I wasn't there for most of them. By my mid-30s, I was managing a team. By 40, I was running a division. My days started before sunrise and ended long after the house had gone quiet. I would come home, loosen my tie, and see the dishes already washed. The kids already asleep. Helen would be at the kitchen table sometimes, a book open but unread. We would exchange a few words about schedules and bills. I would tell her about a difficult client. She would nod. I didn't ask her how her day felt. I asked what needed to be fixed. It didn't occur to me that she might need more than a provider. When our daughter was 10, she had a school play. She was a tree, not a main role, but she had 2 lines. She practiced them in the living room for weeks. I remember her standing stiffly, holding a paper leaf, repeating the same sentence. The night of the play, I stayed late to finalize a contract. It was important. That's what I told myself. Helen recorded the play on a small camcorder. When I watched it days later, I saw my daughter scanning the audience before she said her lines. Just a quick glance. I told her she did a good job. She said thank you and went back to her room. Small moments. That's how it happens. Not with a single dramatic failure, but with 1,000 quiet absences. I was not a cruel man. I didn't shout. I didn't cheat. I didn't gamble away our savings. I simply chose work over and over again, believing I was choosing them. By 50, I had the title I had chased for decades. People stood when I entered a room. Younger men asked for my advice. My parents, before they passed, told their friends how proud they were. At home, things were orderly, efficient, polite. Helen stopped waiting up for me. We spoke more about logistics than feelings. Vacations became shorter, scheduled around my availability. I remember once we were at the beach, and I spent half the week on my phone. pacing near the waterline. My son, already a teenager, stopped asking me to throw a ball with him. He found other people. I told myself this was normal. Children grow independent. Wives grow used to routines. I never asked if she felt lonely. The first real crack came quietly. Helen forgot our anniversary. Or maybe she remembered and chose not to mention it. I came home with flowers, proud that I had left work early for once. She looked surprised. "Oh," she said. "Is that today?" We sat at the table that night and realized we had nothing to talk about beyond the children's schedules. I felt a flicker of something then. Not regret, more like confusion. I had done everything right. I had provided. I had climbed. Why did it feel so thin? But the next morning, I went back to the office, and the feeling dulled. In my early 60s, I finally retired. There was a small ceremony. Speeches. A plaque with my name engraved on it. They thanked me for my dedication, my leadership, my decades of service. I drove home that afternoon expecting to feel relief. Instead, I felt displaced. The house was too quiet in the middle of the day. The kids were grown by then, living in different cities. Helen had built a life that didn't revolve around me. Book clubs, neighbors, routines I didn't understand. I tried to insert myself into her world. I suggested trips, dinners out. She agreed, but there was a distance I couldn't bridge. We had spent 40 years together, and yet I didn't know the small details of her inner life. Her fears, her disappointments, what she had given up to support my climb. One evening she said very calmly, "I learned to live without you a long time ago." She didn't say it with anger. That would have been easier to respond to. She said it like a fact. A year later, she was diagnosed with cancer. It was already advanced. Suddenly, time wasn't abstract anymore. It was measured in treatments and test results, in weeks between appointments, in the way her hands grew thinner in mine. I was there for every hospital visit. I sat beside her bed. I cooked clumsy meals and burned the edges. I told her stories about our early days, about how beautiful she had looked walking down the aisle. She smiled gently, but there was something in her eyes. Not resentment. Not exactly. More like a quiet knowing. One night, not long before she passed, she said, "I never needed more money. I just needed more you." There it was. Simple. Clear. No shouting. No accusation. I had built a fortress of security and left her standing outside of it. When she died, the house felt hollow in a way I had never known. I walked from room to room, touching the backs of chairs, the edge of the kitchen counter, as if I could press rewind. I thought retirement would be our time. I thought we would sit on the porch together, the way she used to like. I thought there would be later. There wasn't. My children visit. They are kind. They call on holidays. They ask if I need anything. But there is a formality to it, a carefulness. I sense that I am a responsibility more than a refuge. They have their own lives now, their own priorities. I see in them a bit of my younger self, always busy, always rushing. Sometimes I want to warn them, but I hesitate. I don't want to sound bitter. I look at the plaque from my retirement ceremony. It hangs in the hallway. The metal has dulled over time. The company itself merged years ago. My old office is someone else's now. My name replaced. All those late nights. All those missed dinners. For what? I can't get back the first steps. The school plays. The quiet evenings Helen spent alone at the kitchen table. I can't go back and sit beside her without glancing at a clock. That's the part people don't talk about when they praise dedication. They don't mention the cost because it doesn't show up on a resume. At 85, the currency that matters is memory. And mine are uneven. Heavy on meetings. Light on presence. I'm not ashamed of working hard. There is dignity in that. But I confused importance with urgency. I treated every email as if it were life or death, and treated actual life as if it would wait. It doesn't wait. If you're listening to me and you're younger, I won't tell you to quit your job or abandon ambition. I understand the pull of it. I understand wanting to prove yourself. I just wish I had understood that love does not store itself for later use. It needs time in the present. It needs you when you are tired. It needs you when it's inconvenient. Success is loud. It gets applause. It gets plaques and speeches. Neglect is quiet. It slips in softly, disguised as responsibility. I used to think I was being strong for my family. Now I wonder if I was just afraid. Afraid of not being enough unless I was achieving something measurable. Helen didn't measure me that way. I did that to myself. These days, I sit on the porch alone in the evenings. The sun sets the same way it did when we were young. The light softens. The air cools. I think about her laughter. About my daughter scanning the crowd for my face. About my son eventually stopping. I don't cry much anymore. The tears have mostly run their course. What's left is a steady ache. This is not a dramatic tragedy. It's an ordinary one. A man who did what he thought was right and realized too late that right and important are not always the same. I have maybe a few years left. Maybe less. I spend them quietly. I call my children more often than they call me. I listen longer than I used to. I cannot repair the past, but I can at least stop pretending it was perfect. If any of this feels familiar to you, if you recognize a piece of yourself in it, then maybe my honesty will serve some small purpose. Not as a warning shouted from a mountaintop, just as a voice from an old porch, saying softly, "There is no later waiting in a safe place. There is only now." And now, at 85, I finally understand that building a career is not the same as building a life. I just wish I had understood it when there was still time to sit beside her, without looking at the clock.